The moment I saw the invitation to my sister's wedding, a wave of confusion and hurt washed over me. Gigi, my own sister, had decided to leave me out, inviting everyone else I knew but not me. And when things began to spiral out of control at the wedding, guess who she blamed? Me. Growing up, the weight of responsibility always rested on my shoulders. As the oldest sibling, it was my job to look after Gigi, something my parents seemed to expect without question. From childhood, I was the one who picked up after her, helped with her homework, and even walked her home after school. They were always too caught up in their work, and I became the default caretaker, the one who shouldered their guilt when they couldn't be there. Even after my mom came home exhausted from her day, the request was the same: "Can you read Gigi a bedtime story?" It wasn't like Gigi made it easy on me. Her social cues were often lost on her. She'd say things that were harsh and thoughtless, leaving me to clean up the mess. Take the time my parents forced me to take her along to my best friend's 13th birthday. We were a bit too old for Barbie dolls, but my best friend loved the gift her grandparents had sent her, a large, intricate Barbie house. When Gigi saw it, she started giggling, then said aloud, "That's a dumb gift." My heart sank as I saw the hurt flash across my best friend's face. My stomach twisted. I tried to make it right, apologizing profusely and then whisking Gigi out of there as quickly as I could. Once we were home, I confronted her. "Why would you say something like that?" I asked, barely holding back my frustration. She shrugged, that infuriating smile still plastered on her face. I said what we were all thinking. She replied casually, as if her words didn't matter. My rage flared up, but when I went to my parents for help, they just turned the tables on me. Instead of acknowledging Gigi's behavior, they lectured me. "Stop being embarrassed about her. You should be a better sister," they insisted. And when I tried to express how hurtful her actions were, they made me feel like I was the one in the wrong. It was a familiar pattern. I was always expected to look out for Gigi, no matter how her behavior affected me. She could do no wrong, and I had to take it. As I grew older, I started pushing back. When they insisted I take Gigi with me to every outing or event, I refused. "She can hang out with her own friends," I'd say. But there were no friends. Gigi had a knack for pushing everyone away, and I was stuck in the middle of it. The lunchroom became her battleground. No one wanted to sit with her because of the way she spoke to people. It was blunt and hurtful, and yet I was still expected to make her a part of my life, no matter how uncomfortable it made me. So, in the end, I reluctantly gave in. I let her join my group when I went off to college, though I hated every second of it. Then came college, the first taste of freedom I'd ever had. My parents wanted me to stay local, to be near Gigi, but I had other plans. With the help of a scholarship, I was accepted into a prestigious university far from home. The decision wasn't hard. When I told my mother, she begged me not to go, saying Gigi would miss me, and I had to take care of her. But I didn't care. I packed my things and moved into my dorm without looking back. It felt like a weight lifted off my chest. At first, I kept Gigi in my Facebook group, thinking it might help her find her own connections. But when I saw how everyone ignored her messages, I realized something: no one was interested in hanging out with her unless I was there to make it happen. Gigi tried to reach out, but her attempts fell flat. People either ignored her or made excuses to avoid her. I didn't blame them. Gigi had made herself an outsider by pushing everyone away with her sharp words and constant demands. And I couldn't fix that anymore. With my new independence, Gigi and I spoke less and less. My parents would call with updates, reminding me to visit and spend time with her. But I ignored their calls. I was done being the caretaker. I was free. Then came the reunion. The one event that drew me back home. I had missed my friends, but I knew what that visit would entail. Would things ever truly change with Gigi? I wasn't sure. But as I packed my bags for the trip, I knew I had a decision to make. The truth of my past was waiting for me, and I couldn't escape it forever. It was supposed to be my moment, a chance to relive old memories with my friends, to catch up on lost time. But Gigi, as usual, had other plans. She insisted on coming, wanting to join me and my friends for the reunion. I'd had enough of her pushing into my life, so I told her, firmly, that this was my event, with my friends, people I had known since school. She had no right to intrude. My parents tried to argue, but I wasn't backing down. Gigi needs to have her own friends, I told them. She can't follow me around anymore. We're not kids. I thought that would settle the matter, but when I arrived at the reunion, the last thing I expected was for Gigi to show up. I was sitting at the restaurant with my friends, laughter filling the air as we shared stories and old jokes, when she walked in, uninvited. My blood ran cold. She had no business being there. Gigi waltzed right up to the table and, before I could even say a word, loudly declared, "Oh, I missed you guys." The room froze. Everyone was taken aback, unsure of how to respond to her sudden appearance. Oblivious to the awkwardness she caused, Gigi pulled up a chair and started talking about how long it had been since she'd seen everyone. My friends tried their best to be polite, but I could see the discomfort on their faces. They didn't want her there, and neither did I. When lunch ended, I pulled Gigi aside, demanding she leave. She dismissed me with a flick of her hand, acting like it was no big deal, as though she wasn't the one who'd barged in uninvited. I was done playing nice. This time, I decided to make an example out of her. I marched her back to the table and, in front of everyone, asked them, was it appropriate for a younger sister to show up uninvited to a reunion? To my relief, my friends agreed with me. They were uncomfortable with Gigi's presence, and my best friend tried to soften the blow, telling her they could hang out some other time, but not today. Gigi's face reddened with embarrassment as she realized just how out of place she was. She shot me an angry look before storming out. I could hardly contain the satisfaction of watching her finally learn what boundaries looked like. That night, when I returned home from the after-party, my parents confronted me. They said I'd embarrassed Gigi in front of everyone. I calmly explained how no one had wanted her there, that she'd shown up without an invitation. But instead of seeing my side, they accused me of being selfish. My mother even mentioned how Gigi always struggled to make friends and was so happy to see mine, as if that excused her behavior. It was a punch in the gut, hearing my parents defend her after all she'd put me through. I told them I had been understanding for years, but these people only tolerated Gigi because I was their friend. I didn't want to protect her anymore. It was time for her to face the consequences. Gigi, overhearing our conversation, barged in, her anger obvious. She claimed that everyone liked her and that I was trying to steal her friends away. I couldn't help but laugh. Then why does no one ever hang out with you? I asked. Why do they avoid your messages and calls? Her expression faltered, but she tried to justify it, saying people were just busy. I shot back, "No, Gigi. They were avoiding you. They're not your friends." My dad exploded, calling me cruel for saying that, but I stood my ground. This was the last straw. I wasn't apologizing. Gigi had crossed a line, and it was time she realized that her actions had consequences. From that point on, the rift between us only deepened. We barely spoke, and holidays felt colder. When it came time for my own wedding, my parents insisted I invite her, warning me that Gigi would be hurt. Reluctantly, I sent her an invitation but refused to make her a bridesmaid. They pushed hard, but I held firm, threatening to uninvite her if they kept pressuring me. Luckily, Kyle, my husband, understood the complexity of my relationship with Gigi and supported my decision. Fast forward to now, and Gigi is married. Her husband, Rick, is much older than her, a man she met while working at a restaurant, a place she could never hold on to for long. She had always talked about marriage to our parents, so when Rick came along, he was her knight in shining armor. When she sent out her wedding invitations, I wasn't surprised to learn I wasn't invited. But what I didn't expect was for Gigi to invite my friends, from the old Facebook group, the very ones she'd never bothered to talk to. Some of my friends reached out to ask if I was attending, and I explained that Gigi hadn't invited me. They were shocked. "How could she invite us and not you?" they asked. It seemed so deliberate. Gigi had cut me out of her life, but now she wanted to take from it when it suited her. I wasn't angry. I just felt pity. My parents defended her, saying she was trying to reconnect with everyone, but it wasn't enough. They wanted me to apologize, but I wouldn't. Gigi had to understand the pain she caused, and now, it seemed, she was repeating the cycle. While their choice of attire might have been unconventional, I could understand their frustration with Gigi's behavior. It was clear to me now that they had been dealing with her constant attempts to insert herself into situations that didn't involve her. They had tolerated it for years out of respect for me, but when Gigi went too far by excluding me from her wedding, they felt it was time to take a stand. When I shared this with Kyle, he was supportive, understanding that my friends had acted out of a sense of loyalty to me. We both agreed that I needed to talk to my family to clear up the misunderstanding and stop Gigi from placing the blame on me for her wedding disaster. The following day, I called my parents and Gigi, hoping to explain the situation. I started with my parents, telling them about the conversation I had with my friends and how their actions were a form of protest against Gigi's behavior over the years. They listened quietly, and while they didn't immediately change their stance, I could tell they were processing it. When it came time to talk to Gigi, I was prepared for another round of her anger. She didn't take it well, of course, but at least I was able to clarify that I had nothing to do with my friends' decision to dress up the way they did. I apologized for not clarifying things sooner, but I also stood firm in expressing that Gigi's behavior over the years had led to this situation. She needed to understand that her actions had consequences, and it was time to take responsibility for the way things had turned out. It was a tense conversation, and Gigi didn't offer much in the way of understanding, but at least I had made my intentions clear. While my family still sided with her to some extent, they had to acknowledge the complexities of the situation. It sounds like you're going through an incredibly tough situation, and I can understand the frustration and heartache you're feeling. You've made it clear that you're not responsible for your friend's actions, and yet your family seems to be putting the blame on you. It's clear you've done everything you can to explain your side and protect your boundaries, but the fact that they continue to side with Gigi is understandably hurtful. Your husband's support through all of this is important, and it's great that he stood up for you when talking to your parents. It seems like the situation is becoming harder to resolve, especially when your family refuses to accept the reality of what happened. It's incredibly draining when you feel misunderstood, and it seems like your decision to distance yourself from Gigi and even block her is a way of protecting your own mental and emotional health. If your family continues to insist on siding with Gigi despite the truth of the situation, it may be time to prioritize your own well-being over maintaining these relationships, at least for now. It's painful when family dynamics become so strained, but it's also important to set boundaries to protect yourself from being constantly blamed for things you didn't do. I hope that, in time, your family comes to understand your perspective, but you deserve peace and respect in your relationships. Is there anything else you're considering doing to navigate this situation?